Years ago, 100 years ago, the butter industry was scared of a new competitor, margarine. So they lobbied the government to regulate that imposter, the butter imposter. Some states demanded margarine be colored pink so it looked unappetizing and wouldn't be confused with the real dairy product. Well, this is another example of crony capitalism. The butter industry used its clout with government to protect itself from competition. Would you want to eat something like this? Margarine got popular anyway because it was cheaper and because doctors said it was healthier for your heart. And eventually the margarine companies got rich enough to hire lobbyists who got rid of the anti-margarine regulations. In fact, they got rich enough to hire a former first lady to do a commercial.
Nowadays, you can get a margarine like the new Good Luck, which really tastes delicious. That's what I've spread on my toast. Good Luck. I thoroughly enjoy it.
The margarine Mrs. Roosevelt has just recommended is new Good Luck, the light margarine.
And Good Luck went out of business in the 70s, but they had a good run. Now we're told margarine is not healthier than butter. It contains those trans fats that the politicians are banning today to protect us. So who knows which product's better? But wouldn't it be good if we consumers sorted those things out without manipulation from politically connected special interests? Today, we see more of the same. Last year, Congress passed the Family Smoking Prevention and Tobacco Control Act. Doesn't that sound nice? Regulation would punish those evil big tobacco companies.
It will force these companies to more clearly and publicly acknowledge the harmful and deadly effects of the products they sell.
But in fact, the law helps big tobacco, like Philip Morris, because it cripples their competition.
The owner of Philip Morris supports the legislation.
Philip Morris can afford the new FDA testing requirements and ad restrictions like a ban on words like light, mild, and low. But a smaller or new competitor cannot. The result? So-called consumer protection that protects big brands. The bill also bans all flavored cigarettes, but for some reason exempted menthol flavor. And guess what? The week before the bill passed, Philip Morris introduced a new menthol cigarette. The politicians may fool the media and public, but it's harder to fool the smart people who put their money where their mouths are. They saw the benefit to Philip Morris. Between the time the bill was introduced and passed, Philip Morris stock rose more than 35%. Government giving a leg up to big companies isn't new. President Eisenhower was onto something when he said,
"We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence by the military-industrial complex."
This year, taxpayers were spared paying $1.8 billion for fighter jets that even the Department of Defense said it didn't want.
We will end production of the F-22 fighter.
But Congress objected, said it would be bad for defense and jobs in their districts.
I'd much rather have the secretary on my side, but we've beaten him in the past, and we'll beat him this time as well.
Senator Dodd wanted to beat him by trying to waste money on jobs in his state. Washington Congresswoman Patty Murray wanted those jobs too.
It, of course, will protect family wage jobs, and importantly, it will preserve our domestic base.
Congressmen were so eager to get business for Boeing and Lockheed Martin factories that it took a veto threat to cut the funding.
This would have been an inexcusable waste of money.
Sanity won that time. But last month, Congress approved funding for 10 new C-17 planes, a presidential helicopter, and a jet engine, despite objections from the Pentagon.
And don't give our steel.
The list of favored cronies is long. The steel industry needs protection from foreign competitors. Car companies and banks and insurance companies are called too big to fail. Government must help them, and help them they do. But when government protects certain industries from competition, and others keep their profits, but taxpayers cover their losses, that's crony capitalism. And joining us again are our two crony capitalism experts, Tim Carney and Dennis Calabrese. Now, Dennis, you're head of a consulting firm in Washington. You did work for the majority leader. You're part of the problem. You're part of this revolving door we hear about.
Well, every time you see a victim of crony capitalism, you're looking at a potential client of mine, because there's somebody on the other side of all these abuses. When Congress tries to pick a winner, there are losers, and losers need representation to go tell their story. Now, I don't lobby Congress, I lobby the American people and tell them the truth and have them apply pressure on Congress to do the right thing. John, I challenge you to find a single area of the American free enterprise system that Congress is not involved in picking winners or losers. It's almost impossible.
And the result is that these companies, which we may not like, I almost feel sorry for them. They have to hire a lobbyist just to keep the special interests from putting them out of business.
And that's exactly what Congress wants. Congress wants you to have to come to them to get what you need, because that leads to campaign contributions, that leads to favors, and that leads to government getting power. Government's not getting just bigger. Government's getting more powerful, which is just as dangerous.
And an example of that, Tim, we have 25% more lobbyists now than we had a decade ago. It's creepy that it does just grow.
And a lot of companies start lobbying defensively, like Dennis was talking about, but then they get here, they hire their lobbyists, and suddenly they realize how much money they can make by investing in a lobbyist who pushes for the right policy. I use the example of Bill Gates all the time, who barely had any lobbyists in 1998 when his company got beat up for antitrust violations, supposedly. He was called before Congress. And then after that, he said, you know what, I used to not come to Washington very much. I'm going to be here a lot more. Now he has a huge lobbying operation that lobbies for regulations that, you know, help him and cause him profit while crushing smaller competitors.
Yeah, I always thought there was a lesson in the fact that this new, big, wonderful industry that grew up without lobbying and created so much wealth for America, Silicon Valley and so forth, they were in the two big cities farthest from Washington, D.C. That left them free to experiment.
But now they're in the swamp, and you see it with every industry where they all start ramping up their lobbying. Hedge funds had to start ramping up their lobbying and their campaign contributions when they were threatened with new regulations. Guess what? Now a lot of them support the regulations that can keep out new entrants. That's one of the main effects of regulation, is keeping out new competitors. So that's why Philip Morris, for instance, doesn't mind it. They control a majority of the cigarette market.
And we will talk more about that in a moment. Coming up next, a toy story that could make a child cry.